Good afternoon, everybody. So we're going to make a start now on BrightGen's Spring 17 release webinar. For those who haven't joined us before, my name is Clive Platt. I'm Head of Service Management here. I'm just doing the introductions, and in a minute I'm going to hand over to our resident CTO, MVP, DSO and bar, Keir Bowden, who's been through all the release notes on your behalf, is going to pull out some of the key points in this up-and-coming release. So the normal format is that if you've got any questions, maybe you could pose those on the webinar chat section, and I'll pick those up and we'll share those with Keir at the end, and he'll attempt to answer them at that point, right there, the Q&A session at the end there of the webinar. So here's the agenda. So Keir's going to run through the details of these, but there's some functionality we're saying goodbye to. So that's your fond farewells. There's a lot of new features in the Lightning experience, which he's going to go through. Not much happening in the classic arena anymore. So Keir will run through that. And there you see the rest of the agenda, analytics. There's some new functionality around management of communities, some updates to Chatter, mobile and platform, and then we'll do questions and answers at the end. Okay, so without further ado, I'll hand you over to your very own, here he is, the lovely, the cuddly, Keir Bowden.
Thank you very much, Clive. Thank you for that line. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Nice to have you back again for yet another Salesforce release webinar. I think this is about our 14th or 15th that Clive and I have been doing, and it only really feels like about 100, doesn't it?
It does.
So the first item on our agenda is the fond farewell. So we've got some features that we're waving off into the sunset. So first up, support for Salesforce for Outlook 2007 and Exchange 2007 ends with the Spring 17 release. So with this release that may well be live, as some of the instances went live last weekend and the rest go this weekend. So your option here is to upgrade to 2010, 2013 or 2016 version. The stay in touch functionality, which allows you to keep in touch with contacts, that's retiring in the summer 17 release. There's no on-platform replacement for this functionality in Salesforce. So if you use this and you need to continue with this level of functionality, you'll need to look to the App Exchange for an alternative. Cloud Scheduler, that's going to retire in the winter 18 release, so in about 9 months' time. 9-10 months time. Again, there's no replacement for this in the product, so the App Exchange is the place you'll have to go to find yourself an alternative. So this is a slightly phased retirement, so it fully retires in winter 18. It's not been available in new orgs since winter 17, so you may not have this, in which case you can just ignore this bit that I'm saying at the moment. If you are currently using it on an existing org, if you remove the new meeting request button, that will effectively disable the cloud scheduler and you won't be able to add it in again. So even if you're thinking you might not need it temporarily, you'd lose it for good. So leave that in place, basically, if you've got any plans on using that throughout the rest of the year. And finally, the classic mobile application is also scheduled to retire in December 2017, and we'll cover more details on that in the mobile section later. So next up, the Lightning experience. Quite a number of changes in this release, as Clive was mentioning. Not an awful lot of work being done at the moment on the classic side of things. And I think the main reason for that is that the Classic is starting to make its way towards more of a maintenance mode, and all the development effort is going into the new Lightning front end. So there's some new features that are only available in Lightning. And in my opinion, you're going to see more and more of that. That's the way Salesforce will be driving people over to the Lightning experience. Eventually, there'll be enough features that you can't do without that are only available in Lightning, so you'll have no choice but to switch over. So the first change is a relatively small one, but it's one that I'm particularly pleased to see, and I'm sure Clive's team will as well. So when you click the gear icon and open up the setup menu, when you hover over the all setup option, you see a little pop-out icon there. And when you click this, rather than replacing the contents of your current page with setup, it opens it in a new browser, tab or window, depending on your browser configuration. So if you want to make a slight tweak to configuration, which is something that certainly we do at BrightGen quite a lot, there's no need now to remember where you are, remember to navigate back after you've made that setup change. Basically, you click the All Setup, that'll open a new window, and every time you click All Setup, it'll open you another new window. It won't reuse the same setup window, so that should will certainly save us a bit of time and hopefully a few others. Next up, favorites. So another nice feature. Essentially, it allows you to bookmark a record, a list, a group, a dashboard, or another page. So the toolbar on the top right of the page has a new item, which is this star drop-down button. So when you're on a page, if you click on that star, it'll add it to favorites, and then you'll receive a notification that this has happened and it's been added to the favorites. When you're on a page that has been favorited, the star will appear blue to indicate that this is one that you've already favorited. And if you click the drop-down button, that'll allow you to view all of your favourites. You can also click the link to edit the favourites, where you can change the displayed name, change the order, or remove an item or one or more items from the favourites in their entirety. So you can think of this as very much like sort of bookmarking on a browser. However, if you bookmark on a browser, then those bookmarks are only available typically on the browser, or if you've shared them between browsers, on the machine that you're currently working on. Whereas because this is stored in Salesforce, then no matter how you access it, you'll be able to get hold of your favourites, whatever device you're using. Note the American spelling here, rather than the UK OU. We just got the O here. So remember to use that in the Salesforce help and documentation, otherwise you won't find any matches, which is what I was doing earlier on today. A little bit of fine detail about favourites. So yeah, as I was saying, they appear on all browsers, regardless of where you're accessing it from. They'll always be there. They also appear on the drop-down menu for navigation bar items, which is quite nice. You can define up to 200 favourites, and those are based on the page types that you see listed down below there. So any of those page types, when you're on those in Lightning Experience, you'll be able to bookmark them and then jump back to those quickly and easily at some point in time in the future. So next we have the utility bar, which is another feature which I think is really nice. I can think of a lot of uses for this. So essentially what it is a toolbar that appears at the bottom of a Lightning application. Just any kind of Lightning application, doesn't have to be a console app. And you can then provide utilities that get accessed in docked panels. So in this case, I've got the chatter feed and a What's New info panel. And if I click on the What's New button, then that will basically pop out a standard item, standard item panel as a rich text area that I've been able to add the details into, containing details of the new functionality. So one of the themes you'll see throughout this webinar is most of my examples all around pizza, effectively working at a Domino's or something like that and producing pizza. And it sounds like we've got another siren coming on as well. So we've clearly chosen an afternoon where the emergency services are all keeping busy in Whittam. So if I click on the icon at the top right of the panel, then that closes the panel down nicely. There's a bunch of standard items that are available, so things like this. I think there's an email, there's a task, there's chatter feed, there's rich text area, but also you can create your own using Lightning components, but not Visualforce at the moment, just Lightning components only. You can now visualize the account hierarchy in the Lightning experience, which is something you've not been able to do up to now. So if you click the View Hierarchy button in the Actions drop-down menu, that basically pops out a standard. The account hierarchy is displayed, and the position of the current account is highlighted. So if you see here, it looks like a little pop-out window. It isn't. It's a full page that you navigate to. I've just cropped this. It shows some other fields as well, and you can customize those like you can in any other layout. There's some improvements to person accounts in this release. They're now available in Professional Edition. You can configure matching and duplicate rules that now specifically target person accounts, whereas before they would just target accounts in general. You can now customize person account pages in Lightning Experience using the Lightning App Builder. In Winter 17, the capability to introduce to create indirect relationships between person and business accounts was introduced, and now in Spring 17, you can create indirect relationships between person accounts and contacts. And for those who haven't used indirect relationships before, this allows contacts to be related to multiple accounts. Note though that in spite of all these improvements, merging is not supported, as we wait for yet another siren to go past. So clearly we're all going to have a great journey home from work tonight at this rate. Right, moving on. You can now view and edit converted leads. Any users who you want to do this need a permission. The permission is very aptly named as view and edit converted leads, so that should be easy to remember. Converted leads appear in list views, related lists, and search results for both the Lightning Experience and for Salesforce Classic. In Salesforce 1, they only appear in the recent leads view. They don't appear in anything else. And note that you cannot unconvert leads. You can only edit the converted leads. You can't take them back to an unconverted state and remove the records that were introduced as part of the conversion. Next up, Sales Path. Sales Path has been renamed Path because it now supports quotes and custom objects. Effectively, you can pretty much path anywhere, so it isn't tied to sales anymore. It also respects the fields that are required by the page layout for the record. So if you're using Sales Path and you're editing a record, if there is a required field, for example, you will be forced to put that field in before you can save the change to the record. And it also respects the, in Salesforce 1, this applies to opportunities only in terms of respecting the fields. So if you're editing a custom record, a custom object, a quote, an order, anything like that, you won't see that requirement, that requiredness enforced on the fields. Salesforce 1 purely for opportunities. So to add a path, you create the path through setup as you always did, edit the record page in the Lightning Experience and add the path component, and then you can be pathing effectively any type of record that has a pick list that basically keeps the stages of the path in there. So in this particular case, we're back to the pizza. I've got a path which shows what stage a pizza record is at. So in this case, we're in the quality assurance stage, having been through various others, including preparation. Similarly to Sales Path, Kanban's also been widened. So on any list view, you can click the grid icon to open the menu. And if the Kanban option is available, so it's not grayed out, then you can view records that way. When you choose Kanban on a list view for the first time, you'll have to provide some information about how the Kanban should be configured for this particular type of object. And it's not cast in stone. You can change your mind afterwards through the Kanban settings menu on the list view controls. So you have to define which field to group your records by. So that's like the opportunities have stages. Your records need to have a pick list with various values, and that's how you'll group it. And also, if you want to display summaries, if you've got totals in there, or if you've got currency amounts and you want to total those up, you'll need to define that as well. So in my case, my pizzas are being summarized by the step in the process that the pizza is currently in. So once I've defined this information, I can see a high-level view of where all the pizzas that have been ordered currently are within my pizza kitchen. If you have different record types, then these just appear as subtabs on the Kanban view. So you can see on the top left here above the ordered, I've got record type for regular pizzas, which we're currently viewing, and also for meal deals, so I can see which status of any of those are in. You can also edit records directly in the Kanban view by clicking the little drop-down icon and then choosing the edit option. So this opens up a dialog where you can edit the record details and save them there. You can also, in Lightning Experience, inline edit a record and a list view really easily. So simply click on the field. So in this case, the billing state province, where the little pencil icon is. That opens the field for editing. And then once I'm done with editing, I click the save button, and my change is applied to the record, which is just immediately redrawn. And finally, on the Lightning Experience, something that has been slightly painful that it's been missing, in my opinion, because it's quite a key thing that a lot of people do. You can now view approval requests in the home page or directly in the nav bar. Basically, so I've got a list of the items to approve that are waiting for me to do something with them here. So I can then click the drop-down button, and that opens up a dialog as appropriate for me to put my comments in and accept or reject as I wish to. So next up, we have some analytic enhancements. So this is something that we've all done for years, even though it wasn't supported by Salesforce, and that's filtering reports through URL parameters. One of the things that we weren't able, this was one of the things that was no longer supported when, or not even supported, it no longer worked when we switched over to the Lightning experience. So we weren't able to do that anymore. So this is probably one of the things that held people up from transitioning over to the Lightning experience, because they'd often have bookmarks to reports where filter criteria were passed on the URL. But it now does work in the Lightning experience. So in this example here, you can see my report defaults to BrightGen as the account name to filter on. So I can then add an additional parameter into the URL, FB0 with a value of webinar. This then updates the value of the filter to webinar and shows me the version of the report that's appropriate for webinar. What's even better about this than the old classic situation is that this is now an officially supported feature. So we're allowed to do this. It's not an Earl hack. It's not something that works, but Salesforce say don't use it. It's something they say it works, and they support it. So the URLs require filters to be attached with the following format. It's basically the first example, ampersand FB0 equals webinar. So the ampersand character simply separates this from any other parameters on the URL. FB0 specifies the first filter on the report. So if I wanted to change to the second, then I'd use FB1. If I wanted to change to the third, I'd use FB2, and so on. And finally, on the right-hand side of the equals, webinar is the value that will be applied to the filter that's specified on the left-hand side of the equals. Hopefully that makes sense. Lightning experience, again, pretty much everything Lightning experience this time around. Dashboard components now have an expand icon, and if you click on this, that generates you a kind of larger zoomed in version of the component that takes up the whole dashboard, which just allows you to see the big picture if there's something that you're particularly interested in, without necessarily having to drill down into the report or that's backing it to view further information. Some additional changes to analytics in the Lightning experience. You can now subscribe to up to 5 reports, and you can set those up to be emailed to you on a daily, weekly, or monthly schedule. You can specify how data that is used to build a display a dashboard is derived. So basically, you can say that should be done as that data should be visible. What's visible to me, the author of the dashboard. You can say that it should be what's visible to a specified user. So basically viewers see the data visible to another user. So in the case of Clive, he could set up a dashboard where all his team get to see his view of all the cases in the system rather than just the cases that they get to see. Or you can have it as the currently logged in user where the viewers just see the data based on their permissions and sharing settings. And you can also allow viewers with appropriate permissions to choose who they view the dashboard as. So if the user has the view my team's dashboards permission, then they can view as themselves or any of their descendants in the role hierarchy. And if the user has the view all data permission, then they can view the dashboard as anybody. And finally, you can now follow dashboards via chatter in the same way as you're able to in Salesforce Classic. Moving on to communities. So the first thing we have, in fact, I think it's maybe the only thing. Yeah, the only thing we have to talk about really on communities is on the setup side of things, which is the community workspaces. Sorry, housekeeping. I've jumped ahead of myself. A little bit of housekeeping on communities first. So this has been coming for a while. Hopefully you've seen this on a few of our previous webinars. Pre-Winter 16 templates, pre-Winter 16 versions of the Koa, Kakua, and CS Napoli templates are no longer supported. So you really do need to be upgrading those, or really do need to be creating new versions of those with the latest versions of those templates, the Spring 17 version. If you've already been through the upgrade process post-Winter 16, then what will happen Spring 17, your templates will just be upgraded automatically as part of the release. You won't have to make any changes. The Lightning Locker service for communities critical update has now been rolled into the generic Locker service. What this means is there's a single critical update now for the Locker service rather than separate ones for regular Locker service and for communities. What that means is that if you enabled the Locker service for communities but not for your internal org, not with the generic setting, then it's no longer enabled for communities because that's just gone away and it's all driven off the generic setting now. And finally, in Spring 17, if you turn the locker service on, this now restricts the content that can be present in the head tag. So if you have custom header sections with anything clever in there, it's worth checking them against the list, which you can get to via the short link shown there. So moving on to community workspaces now that I've finished the bit that I missed. The idea of these is they're a one-stop shop for community management and design. Rather than having menus and the like, you've got a single kind of workspace, almost portal type page to get access to everything you need. These aren't available by default. You have to opt into them via the community management settings. So several key areas. You've got things like administration, where you can configure your settings. There's a few interesting quick links there. There's links to release notes, what's new, that kind of thing. And there's kind of three major workspaces across the top. So the dashboard workspace, so that contains your home dashboard, any other reports and dashboards that you've built around the community, and also the standard engagement reports. Recommendations and topics can now be found on the content targeting workspace. And the moderation workspace contains the moderation dashboard, items requiring moderation, and your moderation rule setup. So things like your member criteria and your content criteria that determines if a post should be moderated. And finally, you can easily switch between workspaces using the wrench icon in the top left, and that will display you a navigation menu. And not just the workspaces, that also allows you to switch between communities down the bottom. You can see here I've only got one BrightGen community, but if I had others, then they would all be listed there and I could easily flip between them. So hopefully something that improves productivity there. So our next topic is Chatter. So the Chatter homepage in the Lightning experience has had a fair bit of work done on it for this release. So what was the all company feed has been renamed to Company Highlights, and it now displays a dynamic list of the top posts from your company. So what constitutes a top post? So these are identified by Salesforce Einstein, the new artificial intelligence aspect of the platform. And basically what they look for is recent posts, so nothing too exciting there, but also high engagement posts will tend to appear near the top as well, tend to appear in the top of that list. So basically you should see the things that you're likely to be interested in, either things you haven't seen before or things that people are getting excited about. The groups you've recently accessed appear at the bottom of the left-hand sidebar. Another interesting change, you can now share posts directly from your Chatter feed to another feed or group. And you can also write some introductory text as part of sharing that. So if you're a Twitter user, this is pretty much like retweeting and quoting tweets. But one thing to note is that if a post has file attachments, they do not get shared. It's only the post that gets shared, not any images, files, etc. that may be associated with it. Chatter streams, these are another interesting new feature. So effectively, streams allow you to amalgamate posts from up to 25 different feeds and feed types. So if we go back to the Twitter analogy, this is something like a Twitter list, which allows you just to say, I'm interested in hearing from all of these different people. I'll have a single feed that shows me all of their posts. So if you click on the plus sign in the stream section, that opens up the new stream dialog, which allows you to search through the various feeds, find the various things that you're interested in, and add them to the feed. So in this final screen snippet here, I've got the BrightGen account and the webinar builders group that I've selected so far. Once I've selected all my items, then as I have on the next shot, any posts to any of those items appear in the feed. So in this case, I've got webinar builders and I've got service experts. They're two groups that I've said I'd like to combine those into my stream. And each of these, as you can see on the post, you've got webinar builders at the top and service experts at the bottom. So each post identifies where it came from as well, so you can see which underlying group, record, person that post actually came from. The Chatter group page can now be customized for individual applications. So previously you could customize this in the Lightning experience, but every group had to take that layout, whereas now you can do it on a per application basis. So in the screenshot here, I've got the standard page. I click on the gear icon, choose the edit page from the resulting menu, go off to the Lightning app builder and edit this. So that's the pattern. Basically anything in the Lightning experience you'll be maintaining through the Lightning App Builder. And then in the second screenshot, I've edited the page to add the membership charts into the right-hand sidebar. But if this chatter group, I can just associate that with a single application, which means that other chatter groups don't have to take that particular layout. They can still stick with the standard layout shown on the left-hand side. Finally, on chatter, groups in the Lightning experience can be viewed as tiles rather than simply as a list view. So you can see the images and see a little bit more detail about the group, which should hopefully allow you to identify which group you're interested in reasonably quickly. Okay, next up, mobile. So first off, some further housekeeping on mobile. As of Spring 17, the minimum iOS requirement for Salesforce 1 is iOS 10. So if you're on an earlier version, you will not see the updated application in the App Store. Effectively, you're stuck on whatever version you are currently on unless you upgrade to iOS 10. As we mentioned earlier, the classic mobile application is planned to retire in December 2017. Now, sometimes when Salesforce things retire, and I'm thinking of some of the early iPad apps they had a go at, they still continue working. They're still there. They just don't get any further attention and any problems of your own concern. In this case, they're not doing it that way. Basically, the classic mobile application, any installed applications will stop working as of December the 1st, is the way it's planned to roll out. And they will also no longer appear in the app or Android Play stores, or Google Play stores rather. So basically, if you're using a mobile app, December the 1st, it will not work anymore after that point. Finally, iOS 10 and Android 7 are the final versions that will be tested against the classic application from a compatibility point of view. So when the iOS 11 upgrade comes along, you can upgrade to iOS 11, but Salesforce won't have tested that, so they make no guarantees that it will work nicely or indeed at all with that. So basically, if you're using the classic mobile application, the very strong message from Salesforce is to migrate either to Salesforce 1 or to find another custom mobile application that addresses your needs, because these aren't going to go on past December. Next up, quotes and orders. So quotes now appear in the navigation menu in Salesforce 1. They're in the recent items section. I've pinned mine here so that it appears directly under the recent heading. That probably won't be the case for you, so don't expect to see it there. You'll have to scroll down a little bit more. And you can also, on the orders side of things, you can create, activate or deactivate orders. You can change the order owner, and you can manage order products from the order product related list. Follow-up tasks. So this is a new feature for Salesforce 1 in Spring 17. You can now create follow-up tasks directly in Salesforce 1. So if you touch the Show More icon down on the bottom right, and then on the resulting list of actions, choose the Create Follow-up Task action. This takes you to a screen where it pulls through details from the original task, and you can enter, update, etc., and save your follow-on task. You can also call or email someone directly from their chatter profile on a mobile device, just by touching either the email or phone field contents. You've always been able to do this on the iOS downloadable app, but now it's supported by the Android downloadable app, also by the mobile browser, so you don't necessarily have to have an application installed to do this. And our last point on mobile, the way that records are created and edited on Salesforce 1 has been unified for both online and offline mode. So what used to happen was that online would wait for a response from the Salesforce servers once you click the save button, which is fine if you're on Wi-Fi in the office. However, if you're in a truly mobile environment, maybe sitting as a passenger in a car or something, patchy connectivity moving between cells, that could lead to a noticeable pause until it was able to actually complete that operation. So now what happens is everything is saved as a pending change into a queue, and then that syncs in the background with the Salesforce servers. And once that save is complete, at whatever point in time it happens in the future, you receive a notification to tell you that that's happened. Okay, and now moving on to our final section. I'm sure everyone's pleased to hear that. The platform. Yeah, not a huge amount to talk about on this for this particular release. Probably slightly fewer changes than we're used to, so it shouldn't take us long to rattle through these. So in the Lightning experience, record pages can now be assigned by record type, profile, and application. So we've got a bit more control over exactly how pages look. So what this means is that the account page that our sales team use doesn't have to be the same as that for our service team. So Clive gets to see the data that he cares about rather than the data that the sales and marketing director cares about. So basically select the application record type and profile tab, as I've done here. Click the Assign To button, and then this asks you to choose initially which applications you're interested in. So let's have a list of all your Lightning applications, and then as usual, you go on and choose the record types and the profiles that the page should be associated with. It's quite a nice feature there, I think. When you're creating a Lightning page for home, record, or an email application, so those three types of pages, you now have the opportunity, rather than starting from scratch, to clone the existing standard Salesforce page and modify it, which again I would expect to speed up some of your work rather than having to start from an empty page and drag everything in. You can start with a full page and just remove the bits and pieces that you don't want. In the Lightning App Builder, you can now change some of the Highlights panel behavior. It's quite nice. So here's the standard Highlights panel, but if I choose the Show as Collapsed in the Lightning App Builder, as I said, everything happens in the Lightning App Builder. Then what happens then is that the heading shows with just the icon, name, and actions. All the fields that appeared in the previous version are hidden away, so I get back a bit of real estate back. And I can also change the default number, the number of visible action buttons. So the default here is 3, as you can see on the top. If I change this to 8, then the header changes to show more buttons. And if there's enough real estate, then the rightmost button doesn't have a drop-down icon on it because there's no additional actions to be displayed. Next up, custom health check baseline. This is quite nice, I think, because up until now, if you're using the health check baseline, if you're using the health check functionality, you were stuck with the standard Salesforce baseline. So if you were in a regulated industry, for example, with more stringent security requirements, your health check couldn't reflect that. You'd score a higher number, but that didn't necessarily, there's no way to enforce it and to actually flag up that you weren't hitting those high standards. Whereas now you can define your own baseline and with those more stringent requirements if you so desire. And the example here, I'm going the other way. I'm not saying this is a good idea. It's just easier for me to demo and I was being quite lazy. So basically what I'm doing is loosening some requirements, so giving a lower baseline. So I definitely wouldn't necessarily recommend that because effectively you're lowering security. If we look here, my webinar org is at 67% of the baseline standard, and one of the issues that's been identified, high risk issue, is that my passwords never expire. So it's a demo account that I use once every 3 months. So that's fine. So I don't care about this, and I don't think that's a high risk for this particular org. So what I've done is I've created my own baseline called Webinar that doesn't consider this an issue. Once I install that custom baseline, my score then goes up to 70% of the standard, and my password expiry now meets the standard security settings. And I just do this by basically pulling down the baseline as I think it's a JSON file, just editing that and then re-uploading it with a different name. Simple as that. So hopefully that'll be something of use and interest if you're using the baseline information. Next, we've got a couple of changes to to Visualforce. If you're not a developer, you can switch off for this if you so desire. If you're using the Salesforce Lightning design system, then you don't need to include it as a custom resource anymore, a static resource rather. There's a new Apex SLDS tag, and that includes the latest version of the design system into your page. So keyword to note there, latest. If a new version is pushed, your pages automatically receive that with any changes that may be in there. So I guess that leaves the possibility that things could change underneath you unexpectedly. And for that reason, I wouldn't be surprised if in a future release there was a mechanism that allowed you to specify a particular version you wanted. I think it's a great idea that they've done this because all of us that have been using the Lightning Design System have been uploading exactly the same versions as static resources all over the place. They've probably got thousands of versions that are all the same, just uploaded by individuals into individual orgs, much the same as they've probably got about 1 million version of jQuery loaded up there that are all exactly the same. There's also a new, again, around the Lightning Design System, there's a new $asset global variable, and that allows you to access images, sprites, icons, etc. from the Lightning Design System, again, without having to go back to a static resource. And finally, if you've built a force.com site that's purely Visualforce, you can now disable access to standard pages, whereas before, if somebody knew the standard page URL, they could actually bypass your Visualforce pages and go directly to it. So that's been locked down now. Okay, and as everyone breathes a sigh of relief, it's time for our final content slide. Just a few minor changes on the platform side of things. So on the Apex side, if you've got more than one method annotated as test setup in a test class, it won't run once Spring 17 is live. There's now a maximum of 1 per class. If you have any more, it won't warn or anything like that. It will just refuse to run. You can now make web service callouts from chained queuable jobs. So these are chained queuable jobs are basically asynchronous jobs, and chained queuable jobs means that it's an asynchronous job that's been started by another asynchronous job. So effectively, the first one couldn't do all the work that it needed to do, so it fired off another one, or there is some additional things that need to happen as part of process orchestration. It's fired off another one. Those additional jobs are now allowed to make web service callouts. And finally, the Lightning component error message have improved quite a bit since, or are going to improve quite a bit in Spring 17. So as you can see on that little screen snippet there, these now give details of the actual error that occurred rather than just a generic BARF message, which didn't tell you an awful lot, like A is not defined, C is not this. So yeah, that should help with debugging the Lightning experience. Sorry, debugging Lightning components, which has always been a little bit problematic. And that's it. Thanks everyone for sticking with us. So this has been a whistle-stop tour, as usual, of the features in Spring 17 that, in our opinion, are going to be of interest to our customers. There's 497 pages of release notes this time, so we're almost at the half a thousand. So there's plenty of stuff that we didn't cover. If you visit the short link shown here, you'll find release notes, training information, demo videos, and much more to allow you to avail yourself of all the additional features which are there. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Clive and see if we've got any questions.
Thanks, Keir. Thanks ever so much for that. Well, I've got one question. Do you need to have Lightning experience enabled in order to take advantage of Wave?
It's a very good question. I don't believe so. I think Wave should be. You certainly. No, you can use Wave, whether you can use the embedded Wave functionality, because you can embed Wave dashboards into record home pages and things like that. I think you'd need Lightning for that, but you wouldn't need Wave. You wouldn't need, Lightning experience just to be able to use Wave. Wave is its own application within the system. It's its own front end. It's its own mechanism for building dashboards.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And I can see we've got one more on there, which is basically around the health check. So someone was paying attention. That was good. So one of the questions we got here is it possible to add in your own features to the health check? No, sadly it's not. There's no mechanism for being able to specify other items of configuration that you must have set up in order for the health check to be satisfied, which is a bit of a shame because I've kind of got various Visualforce pages that attempt to check that our Bright Media system is set up appropriately, and that probably is the kind of thing that could be used there. But no, they don't allow that at the moment. I haven't seen anything to say that they're going to do it, but I haven't seen anything to say they're not going to do it either. So if that's something you want, then it's probably a good thing to raise on the idea exchange and see if you can get some attention from product management there.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much, Keir. And there's no further questions. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for your attention. I hope you found the session useful. We'll be issuing the slide deck and the YouTube recording of this if you want to just catch up on various or any specific pieces of the webinar.
Or if you enjoyed it so much you just want to watch it again.
If you can't sleep for any reason, there might be something that might be of use to you. But I'll just, in all seriousness, though, if there's any items within the webinar that you want to discuss separately, by all means contact us. The numbers are there on the screen, or email me, or or get in touch with us however you want, and we'll be quite happy to discuss any part of the webinar with you in more detail. If anybody's interested, we've got another webinar coming up next month. It's the 15th of March. It'll be me this time, unfortunately for you, and it'll be just showcasing our service management function. If anybody's interested in listening to that, we'll be sending out invites, and I hope you'll join us. And so if there's nothing else, Keir, anything else you want to share with us?
No, I have nothing else to say. I've unhurriedly set out all of my knowledge of the Spring 17 release there.
He's now taking a well-deserved lie down in the dark room. So thank you once again, everybody, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.